Here we go. Okay, cool. All right, so tonight topic is tournament management magic, brought to you by our magic number, which is the number 3. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to run a tournament, how to manage a tournament, what tournament assignments look like. The goal is to go ahead and get everybody on the same page and on the same footing so that everybody's ready to run our Summer Sevens tournaments, or at least participate actively. So for Summer Sevens in particular, you're going to have to potentially be in a position of a referee manager, which is usually sort of the senior referee who's been around the block a few times. They're organizing, they're making assignments, they're liaising with the host team. Potentially, I think we have some of our team partners here. You could be hosting a tournament and running a tournament. And how do you interact with the referees? So those are some of the things that we're going to be covering tonight for referees that participate in a sevens tournament. And this is actually covering some topics that are pertinent to other kinds of tournaments as well. And so for your participation, like this is what's going on in the background. This sometimes seems like it's kind of out there and you don't really understand it. It doesn't really make sense, but you get through the day. Well, that's sort of what we're trying to get folks to understand so that you know everything that's going on sort of behind the scenes. All right, there we go. So get on board the bus, put on your math hats. My life goal, be Miss Frizzle's 40 sister. So we're going to talk about tournaments. A very famous person, also known as Mike O'Brien, the younger, said once, you can make the game go, or you can make the game good. And that is our watchword for the evening. We're talking about whether you can sort of make things happen and get through the day and just sort of make it go, or you can do the right thing for the team, for the referee, for the tournament, make it a good experience for everyone. We want to keep everyone coming back. That is our goal, is make sure that everyone's coming back, teams, referees, and we want to make sure the hosts have a good experience as well. Okay, so we're talking about who benefits: teams, referees, coaches, managers, players, hosts, okay? Host teams, their goals, they want to recover or exceed their costs. That's their short-term goal, right? You don't want to take a loss on a tournament. That's your long-term goal. Most folks are hosting tournaments with the goal that they're going to be hosting this kind of tournament probably every year, or at least biannually. Like this is an event, right? You go through all the trouble of setting this up. You want to make sure people are coming back. You start to depend on it as an income opportunity. For teams, for players, these are athletes we're thinking about. They want good competition. They want value for investment. They're looking at the fees. They're looking at the time commitment. They're looking at the travel. They're looking at player and overall team development towards a season goal. Their season goal may be just sort of to have good camaraderie, develop some players, try to get people to come back for the fall 15 season, keep people in shape. That's a goal. Some teams, it's like, hey, we want to go to nationals. So that's what they're developing towards their season goal. Referees, guess what? They're also athletes and they have very, very similar goals. Some referees, it's a way to stay in shape. It's a way to hang out with people. Some referees, they're thinking about, hey, I want to do really well in these sort of regional tournaments. I want to try to get a spot at a qualifier. I want to do really well at a qualifier. I may want to get an opportunity at a regional tournament or a national tournament. So we're thinking in this context, and really in all contexts, that athletes are athletes are athletes. Whether it's a team, a player, a referee, we're all athletes here. We need to think about ourselves as athletes. So when we're managing athletes, anybody who's ever coached a team, who's ever played on a team, most of my referees, you guys will understand, these are all the things that we're all thinking about it. We're all sort of thinking about the same sort of priorities, our considerations. We're looking at our conditions. What is it going to be like to be out there all day? What is the weather going to be like? What is our playing surface? Is it turf? Is it grass? Ease of access. How much of a pain in the butt is it to get there? I know like Blue Balls is a great example. They play at a state park. There's like a $6 fee just to park there. And it's a huge pain in the butt, and you have to pay in cash. Travel time, start time. Is it a really remote location? Do they want an 8 a.m. kickoff? How long is the day? How many games? How long is your duration of play? What's the support system look like? Is there always a really good support network there? Do you have multiple people sort of provided by the host to kind of help to manage logistics? Or are you kind of out there on your own and it's a cluster? Like nobody wants that. Effort, like what is our competition level? What are we thinking of in terms of speed, pace, the difficulty that we're going to have to deal with that day? Depth, in terms of our roster, do we have reserves? Are we thinking that, this is going to be really tight and we might squeak through? Or are we thinking in advance and trying to plan for that depth in the roster? And then we're also thinking about growth, getting back to the idea that everybody's working towards a season goal. How are we achieving individual development goals while meeting our team needs? Rule of three. So this is the most important thing. Like, please walk away from tonight with the rule of three. If you ever get in trouble in a sevens tournament, you're planning a sevens tournament, you're doing anything in the tournament world, 3 is your magic number, okay? All right, matches per hour. That's a pretty simple setup. In a sevens tournament, we're thinking in match blocks generally in 20-minute intervals. It's easy to remember, it's easy to divide. 3 times 20 equals 60 minutes, okay? So we're gonna have 3 match blocks per hour. The World Rugby Rule, FYI, no less than 1 hour between whistle off and whistle on, no more than 3 hours between whistle off and whistle on. So that actually translates to, like, if you have a 9 a.m. kickoff as a player or as a referee, you're not going to have another kickoff until at least 10:20. Okay. So thinking about those hour blocks, that's a really helpful sort of metric. Minimum number of referees for a tournament, 3. Minimum number. I don't care how big or small the tournament is. Your minimum number is 3. Why? Because 2 doesn't build in redundancy. For safety and quality of match, nobody should be running more than 1 match in an hour. We just talked about that. It's important for depth that there is redundancy. If somebody gets hurt, it is not fair to ask 1 person to cover the rest of the day. So you need 3 people. So even if everybody gets a little bit less of a workload, that's redundancy and it's built in. It's made sure that everybody has a good experience walking away from the day, that nobody's killing themselves to cover and the teams are still getting that good experience. Everything's still running on time, another big consideration. If you're adding a field plus 3 referees, an additional field will double the match load. So referees are still going to have to cover potentially 3 matches an hour on one field, now another 3 matches an hour on another field. So we need 3 extra referees. So you're adding 3, adding 3, adding 3. Those are your scenarios. Add a division, add 3 referees. A pool is usually 4 teams. This is called an nth triangle number. If anybody cares, it's not a factorial. I found that out. 3 plus 2 plus 1 matches each. That's going to get us to 6 matches. So pool of 4, 3 plus 2 plus 1 gets us to 6 matches. You're thinking about 3 playoff matches. You're going to have 2 teams coming out of pool play on each side. They're going to play each other. We're going to get to a final. That's 3 more matches. So you're getting 9 matches to the schedule every time you add 2 pool division. Okay, which is pretty typical when you're thinking about it. That you're going to have at least 2 pools if it's worthwhile to add a whole extra division of competition. Okay. One of the big takeaways that we want to think about here is we do it well because we care. We talked about this before. We talked about referees being competent. We talked about them being, oh crap, now of course I forgot it. We're going to go over it on the next slide. Don't worry about it. Responsible and accountable, competent, accountable, responsible, and ethical, and also enthusiastic. Can you do more than 1 match per hour or 5 matches per day? You can, but you're probably not going to do it well. We're pros. We believe in delivering the best quality. It's not fair to the teams, your peers, or the referee society to deliver less than an amazing product. And we're going to go over a little bit more science to demonstrate why this is, because I know I hear a lot of times from referees like, oh, I could run 1 back to back, or like, oh, I've often done 16 matches in a day. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't do it well. And we owe it to the teams and we owe it to ourselves, right? We owe it to ourselves to try to grow throughout the day. Even if we've done 10,000 matches in our lifetime, we still have opportunities to learn. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we do things well, that we grow during the day, that we are accountable for our own performance, and that we're going to give a good product to the teams. So when we're thinking about, there's your acronym again: competent, accountable, reliable, ethical, and enthusiastic. So studies show that sprint duration in particular decreases with the number of matches that you're doing. There's a study that came out of Spain in 2013. Referees' movement patterns were relatively stable from the first to the second match, although a substantial decrease was observed in the second match for maximal and average sprint distances. So they weren't running as far in their sprints, and they weren't running as much. Substantial decrease in the number of sprints and maximal speed was observed in the third match in comparison with the second. Compared with the first match in the third game, referees showed a substantial decrease in maximal and average sprint distance. And this was a national championship in Spain that they measured this. And then also we're thinking about, psychology, right? So we're hearing the sprints, we're hearing that people are walking more, we're hearing that you're not able to get there. If you can't get there for the call, are you more or less likely to make the correct call? And adding to that, the chemistry, stress chemicals in your brain when you're really, really, really tired, they're going to interfere with your ability to make good judgments. I was a study by an individual named Yu Rongjun, and the neurobiology of stress came out in 2016. Quote, when under stress, fast and effortless heuristics may dominate over slow and demanding deliberation and making decisions under uncertainty. Stress elicits a switch from an analytic reasoning system to intuitive processes, and predicted that this switch is associated with diminished activity in the prefrontal executive control regions and exaggerated activity in subcortical reactive emotional brain areas. So to translate, when stressed, individuals tend to make more habitual responses than goal-directed choices, be less likely to adjust their initial judgment and rely more on gut feelings. Okay, so the more experienced a referee you are, the more likely your gut's going to be correct. But for all of us, nobody's going to be making good judgments at the end of the day. So the best thing you can do is reduce that match load, reduce the demands on your brain, on your body, so that you're still capable of doing good decision making at the end of the day. Okay, so we're thinking about, we don't want to just get through it. We want to make sure we do it right. All right, so tournament math, and I'm going to go ahead and pause before we get into the tough part, because this is an interactive exercise that we can all have fun with, and I'm going to check the chat. So what do we got in the chat? Yeah, Stephen, I'm sorry, there's math. And that's not true. I told you there was going to be math. Literally, math hat was in the email. Thank you, Kristen, for, yes, factorials do involve multiplication. Appreciate that. My stats partner got me there. So yes, we are on the Magic School Bus of Learning, people. We are doing all the hard things. So whip out your pencils. And I do mean, well, there's so many jokes there. I'm not going to go there. Grab your pencils and a piece of paper. We're going to try to do a little math. Okay, so here's your exercise. 2 elite brackets of 2 pools each. So we have 4 teams per pool, kind of in our example. 2 social brackets of 3 pools each. 3 fields. How many referees do we need under this scenario with no more information? As soon as somebody has an answer, holler it out. Remember your rule of 3. You're going to have a 3 ref minimum. Each field adds 3 referees. Each division after the first one adds 3 referees.
$18.
18, yeah.
Close, close.
Not enough.
3 more, 21. So 3 ref minimum, plus 3, adding 2 times fields, 3 times divisions to get a total of 4 divisions. We're at 21 referees. So this is an interesting, we're comparing this to the old way of doing this. Anybody have an idea? What was the old way of calculating how many referees might be needed for a tournament?
Number of games divided by 3.
Yeah, that's right. Well, number of games usually, yeah, divided by 3 to 5, somewhere in there. So number of games. So if you divvy that up, it comes out to, based on the information I gave you, that's 82 matches. Divided by 4 gets you 20.5 referees. So we're pretty spot on, even calculating it both ways. So, however, did anybody think about how long are we going to run? What time are we starting in the morning? How long is it going to take with 3 games an hour on 3 fields to get through all those 82 matches?
That's over a 9-hour tournament.
Yeah, that's a long day, right? Nobody wants to do that. And that's if everything runs on time. So we've got to come up with a solution. And this is something that tournament managers do all the time. They're like, oh God, this isn't actually going to work. So what do we do? All right, here's solution 1. Here's solution 2, add a field, which would add 3 referees. You can now run 12 matches per hour instead of 9. That brings our time down significantly. So that ends us up again somewhere around, let's see, 7 hours of rugby. 24 referees, less than 7 hours. We can build in some breaks and still go 9 to 4. Okay, so solution 2, we're limiting our pools. Maybe we don't have the opportunity for an extra field. Maybe you don't want to. I don't know what the deal is. We'll limit our pools. You limit each social division to 2 pools instead of 3. You use 8 teams. You're reducing your total match load by 14 matches, 6 per pool, 1 final each. Total match load is down to 68 matches on 3 fields. 3 matches per hour gets us to around 7.5 hours of rugby. Still a lot, right? So it looks like add a field, but you're adding 3 referees. And a lot of teams look at that and they're like, oh, I don't know. So brief recap on tournament math. Most tournaments rely on income from team fees to cover expenses. Team fees, somewhere between $300 and $400 a team, usually. Field costs for the day tend to vary. Signal Hill and Manassas happen to have theirs displayed on their website, so I borrowed their numbers. $300 a field for the day. Referees. Different referee societies do it in different ways. I pulled a quick sampler of the Mid-Atlantic, since that's who we usually interact with. Potomac charges per team. East Penn charges per referee. Virginia has a whole thing and it's very complicated. And I think that unpredictability definitely contributes to some anxiety among the teams, but that's how they do it. So if we game that out and we go through the math, we're adding a field. We're assuming a $300 entry fee. Your base income, $12,000. Base cost times 2 fields. I want to point out the most expensive thing for most teams is medical. I'm not accounting for that, but that is a huge cost for the team. So FYI. Base cost times 2 fields, add a field, $300. You still end up with a pretty good net. We're still looking at a solution 1. It's a $3,900 total cost. Solution 2, we're bumping our cost to, we're bringing it down actually. So we have started out with 9,600. We're losing our teams. We're bringing our costs down. We're also losing our team revenue. So the difference in margins from scenario number 1 to scenario number 2. Scenario number 1, you still end up with a $7,800 margin. Scenario number 2, you have a $6,600 margin. So you can see how you have to kind of game these things out. And in this scenario, under both a Potomac scenario and an East Penn scenario, it makes more sense to keep more teams, keep the tournament big, and just add fields and add referees. Now, what you don't want to do is skimp on the referees. And I think Potomac, I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt. I wasn't here, but I'm going to say that Potomac made a conscious choice to say we charge per team. So there is always an incentive to have more referees as long as they're available. Why? Because again, safety considerations, quality of match considerations, we're making sure that everybody wants to come back. We're developing referees. East Penn charges per referee. There is sometimes that incentive. People like to think about, hey, maybe I could save some money on the referees. Guess what? It's never going to work out for you. More referees make a tournament run better, okay? The costs are always outweighed by the benefits to the host. The referees can sort of be pseudo structure for you. They can help provide, they can keep things moving, they can keep people organized. More teams, more profit. Like you're just, more teams that you have at a tournament, the more likely you are to see the black in your book there, because you're going to have the opportunity to make more profit off the fees. You're thinking about most of the time your fees are going to be, if you have a $300 entry fee, that's 2 referees, even under an East Penn scenario. Okay, so also, again, redundancy in case of injury, better performance by the referees. Why do we not cut referees if match loads drop? You can, it diminishes quality. So we talked about sort of the old way of calculating referees, calculating total matches and then just sort of dividing it up by 3, 4, or 5. That method doesn't account for match difficulty because it assumes that all matches are the same. That you're thinking about, you know, across divisions, these matches are going to be the same. Time of day, finals versus full play. We had that, the science that said first match to third match, there's going to be a big difference in performance. or it really doesn't allow much room for referee development. You're sort of just making assignments to get through the day. You're covering matches. You're not assigning these matches consciously, and you're not trying to grow anybody. You're just trying to get through the day, which is what we want to avoid. So again, teams and referees, we're the same. We're all athletes. A team's experience in a tournament is going to track with the referee's experience in a tournament. 3 matches, pros of this, everybody's so fresh at the end of the day, but people may not feel like they're getting much value out of it. Like, hey, I drove 2 hours, I played 3 matches. Like, I'm not sure I got my value today. 4 matches, that's kind of the sweet spot. Good value for money, sweet spot for effort versus opportunity for injury. Everyone gets a couple of chances to learn. They're applying new knowledge. 5 matches, you can kind of squeak through. You can have fewer referees there, but there's a high potential for injury. There's no redundancy, and people aren't learning in quality softwares. Because again, when you're just getting through it, you're not learning anything. Again, thinking about assignments for referee assignments. Before I go here, I'm going to check the chat one more time. Yeah, the one that pulls a hamstring. Exactly. That's why we need redundancy, because that's been me for sure. From Percy, I don't actually know what the New York rule would be. Percy asked, how much do referees make under the per team fee scenario? If our treasurer is on, I will ask her to communicate that to you via the chat. But yes, I think Potomac referees, we all get a sort of a flat fee. It's a little bit different as well, because there's not as much of a driving distance issue. In areas where there is a big driving distance issue, the formula can be a little bit different. It kind of just depends. Okay, getting into assignments. When we're making assignments, we also think about the rule of 3. 3 for the finals. A lot of people like to do the thing where they're like, oh, okay, we're going to pick out the best referee here. We're going to put them on the final, and we're just going to do our math backwards. The way that is not wrong, but it just doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. It doesn't give you any flexibility for upsets. You know, it's kind of the Wayne Barnes in the World Cup situation where they're like, okay, best referee in the world. Whoops, England got to the final. So, you know, that kind of creates a problem. Or you have a situation where 3-4 matters more than the 1-2. It's a seeding issue, or people are trying to go to nationals and 2 are through and 1 maybe not. Pool play oddities where you might have a situation where the semifinal is really the 1-2 match just because of the way things shook out in pool play. 3 for development. But just to say, so you want to have a group of 3 referees sort of ready for those medal rounds. And it may overlap because you might have just sort of, you know, that many referees to work with for every division. But the idea is that you're going to have a pool of 3. And then as soon as pool play is over, you can sit down and be like, okay, we have a short break. I'm going to go through and make assignments from here, now that we know what the landscape looks like. So always save those 3 referees for the top of each division. 3 for development. Every referee on the day should have 1 easy match, 1 really challenging match, and 1 that tracks with their skill level. If there are extra games, if we're in that 4 or 5 game scenario, the extra game should be within the skill level so the referee has a chance to practice. They're getting to see sort of the same situation 2 or 3 times in a row, which is really the only way that we as referees really get to train and to practice, is to sort of see the same situations over and over again. So you want 1 that's easy, it's a chance to breathe. You want 1 or 2 or possibly 3, but really no more than 2. It's really like that 4 game sweet spot. We're thinking about having the opportunity to practice. And then you really want 1 to challenge you, to open your eyes that here's a really fast pace. There's some teams that, you know, that tend to fluster me. I'm going to get a chance to practice that. And 1 just gives you that little extra edge. And that's part of also feeling like you come away from the day with a good experience. You're like, I got challenged today. I felt with it. I felt part of the team. 3 for the teams. You're sort of thinking about a couple months ago, we talked about how assignments are made sort of in the 15 season, and really at any time. Assignments are made where you take sort of the average skill level of 1 team, the average skill level of another team, and the referee is going to be somewhere in the middle, usually sort of tracking towards the lower end, wherever that gap is, because the referee, the more skilled teams will usually sort of play to the referee. So when we're thinking about a sevens tournament or any other tournament situation, we are organizing our referees sort of into thirds. We're organizing our teams into thirds, sort of taking those average skill levels and assigning our balanced slate of referees based on that sort of thirds scenario. You have a third of referees that you're going to kind of think about as in that higher bracket, but they can also drop down, do some things. But you wouldn't want a referee who's in that sort of highest level to be doing the lowest level games, because that's really going to throw off their ability, because the change in pace is going to be really hard on that referee. So you can kind of shade lower. And then the folks who are sort of coming in, they're new, they're challenging matches are going to possibly be in that middle area. And then the folks in the middle can kind of shade. So it really gives you sort of an easy mental structure when you're making assignments to divvy everything up into thirds, referees by thirds, teams by thirds, skill level by thirds. Okay. So the idea, again, we're thinking about getting everyone to come back. We want the teams to have a good experience, you know, and a lot of our folks will say, oh, I've come away from every tournament, there's teams that hate the referees. Well, yeah, but we want to avoid negative experiences. We want to make sure that folks have a good time. That if a team walks away saying that, it's not because the referee was exhausted. It's not because the referee wasn't able to do that game, that their competencies weren't there. It's not because the referee was like, oh no, I'm not tired, I can do this match, and they weren't held accountable for that. So we want to make sure that we as referees are behaving competently, with accountability, that we are responsible, that we're ethical, we're all of those things, because we care about the game, so that the teams have a good experience, they want to come back. And then our fellow referees, right? You want to involve referees at every level, from the senior ref, who's probably the referee manager, to the folks that are coming out because they believe in the game and they want to be there, to the new folks that are learning and growing. They're all involved. There is a conscious path. We are not just getting through the day. We are making sure that everybody has a good time, that everybody grows, that everybody learns something, and it is valuable for them to be there. So, watchword at the end of the day is everybody coming back next time. Okay, practical tips for keeping a tournament running smoothly. I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to barrel on ahead. All right, so do build in periodic blanks. So if there's a referee, if you are the senior referee or referee manager for a tournament, these are the kinds of things when you get a schedule from that host team that you can kind of point out and be like, hey, whoa, we didn't build in breaks. Or hey, do we have support staff? Do we have ball persons? These are the sorts of things that you as a referee manager want to look for. You as a referee are seeing the schedule that's being passed down from the referee manager. These are the questions you want to ask. And just sort of, this is what's going to prepare you for a good experience. Building in those breaks. Do have ball persons. It makes so much of a difference to keep a tournament running on time when you have people to shag balls. Do not plan for anybody to be longer than 8 hours. If it gets into a situation where you're pretty sure this tournament's going to run long, maybe thinking about staggering referees, having some folks come for the morning, having some people show up for the end of the day. But really, nobody should be outdoors and in the sun, in the cold, in the heat, whatever, for more than 8 hours. Again, teams and referees. How long does a match take? So people are like, oh, well, you know, there's 20-minute blocks, a 7-minute halves with 1 minute for halftime. That's only getting you to 15 minutes where there's extra minutes going. Well, because of stoppages, because of on and off field time, World Rugby, with their legions of support staff and all of their administrative people and running professional teams that have been here before, they still build in 22 minutes at bare minimum. World Rugby data says the average match time from whistle to whistle, ball in play, is 18 minutes. So, you know, it's never going to run on that 15-minute time, even though that's what we think of when we think of a sevens match as 15 minutes, 7 minutes halves, 7 plus 7 plus 1 for 1 minute for halftime. It never actually does that. So in order to sort of avoid this, a lot of times, because it's kind of harder to remember if you're running like a 22-minute block or a 25-minute block, it's hard to remember that, especially if there's 10,000 things going on and you have a bunch of people who have never been to a tournament before. It's easier to just think of those 20-minute blocks and then build in breaks. Build in after every hour, you have a 20-minute break, or after every hour and, you know, after every 6 games, you have a 20-minute break, and kind of build in that time, because it may end up that you don't have a break at all. You're running straight into the next block, but you've caught up and you've reset and you're back on time. So also we want to have several dedicated host staff to be problem solvers. You know, it's one of my favorite teams here in the Richmond area. God bless them. They have one guy who's amazing. He's so good. But it always turns out at tournaments that there's 15 things happening and everybody's like, well, where's Tony? Go ask Tony. Does anybody talk to Tony? And Tony is doing everything he can, but he's only one guy. So don't be that team. Make sure that there's always several dedicated host staff to be problem solvers, referee managers. This is something that you can, again, sort of encourage. Do have extra eyes on every match. If it's something where the host team, usually you sort of have floaters, people wandering around to kind of deal with situations as they arise. As referees, we can help with that too. If you're warming up for a match, kind of keep an eye on what's going on that field. If you're cooling down, stay for a half, keep an eye on what's going on. Because, and again, with scheduling, we're not scheduling people right up on top of each other. We're doing that on purpose to help, again, make sure that we have eyes on every match. What should never happen is a referee who's kind of on their own, and there may be a controversial call, there may be somebody behaving badly, there may be an injury, and they could just use a little bit of support in that situation. So we as referees can help out by making sure that there's always a second set of eyes on every match. Sometimes it's just that people in the tents are watching the field right in front of them. That's easy, but we want to make an effort, especially for the further away fields, if there's always someone there. Do not expect referees to answer competitions questions. A lot of times referees kind of show up and teams look at you and you're like, you're running this tournament, right? Well, what happens if, so-and-so dropped out and that messes up our bracket, and like, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know. It's not my problem. Like, well, this team had 2 red cards, but they still want to play. Like, that's a competitions issue. Well, this team didn't file their roster. Competitions issue. We adjudicate the game on the field. Beyond that, not running brackets, not making decisions about competitions. Don't care who's qualifying for nationals. We adjudicate the game on the pitch. Okay. So a lot of times there's sort of this, we all want to help, and we've been there before. We kind of end up getting tangled in competitions questions, but we want to absolutely avoid that as much as possible. Consciously think about, is this a refereeing issue or is this a competitions issue? All right, quick referee list for tournament day for anybody who hasn't been there before. All your normal stuff, plus snacks, extra socks, sunscreen, electrolytes, a chair, and I actually forgot to put on here, bring spares, like bring extra socks, but also bring like extra jerseys, extra shorts, because running multiple games, you're going to get sweaty, you're going to perspire. And I, for one, do not enjoy putting on a soaking wet jersey going into the afternoon. Also, you're going to have lots of teams with different colors. So you're going to need to make sure that you have colors for every potential team jersey scenario. So, and then sometimes you just bring a tent, because that happened to me. Everybody thought I was actually crazy for bringing a camping tent to a tournament, but it snowed in Towson. And I will tell you that at one point, myself, Marlena, Tom Lyons, and Craig Sikowski were all inside that one-person pup tent. So ended up being clutch. So there's your MAC qualifier 7. I hear, yep, that happened. So there's our MAC qualifier 7s. There's another couple of tournaments happening in the area. I will post a link in the chat that the Washington Athletic Club has sort of posted a master list of all the 7s tournaments in the country. If you're away on a beach trip, see if you can maybe just duck in. It's kind of a fun experience. Anybody wants to go to Cape Fear in 2 weeks, I think, the 26th and 27th, I'm going down. They are providing accommodation, and they can use another couple of referees. So if anybody wants to go to that. All right, that concludes my presentation. So I will stop sharing and talk to you fine people. Thank you, Buzz. All right, so does anybody have questions about the subject matter of what we covered?
Hi, Gray.
Yeah.
Hi. So thanks for calling me out on the math. Appreciate that.
You put it in the chat, brother.
It's fair. Legitimate question, because I'm wearing 2 hats right now. So we got the cow pies. And I know we fired through, you actually gave us an example where we actually went through the exercise. And wanted to see how my math compared, what I eked out versus what we think with the model.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I wasn't good in tracking your formula. I apologize. So I lived up to my reputation. So we got 2 middle school brackets, 4
Okay.
teams, 1 pool
Okay.
each of 4 teams. And the expectation there is pool play with one former match, so 4 matches in total for each of those teams.
So there's 2 pools per bracket.
No, but there's 1 pool in I'm sorry, take that back. It would just be 3 players, 3 games, 3 games for each team. They're just playing a round robin.
Okay.
Right.
All
Just
right.
1
So
pool
what's our
each, 4
minimum
teams.
number?
So that I'm looking at, let's see, that's 6 games. If I'm adding that correct. No, wait,
6
12.
games.
let's see, a pool of 4.
So pool of 4 gets you 6 games. If
Right.
everybody's playing everybody. Yeah.
Okay, so I got that right. Okay, so we have 2 pools with just 6 games each.
Correct. So now we're at 12 games.
All right, so that's that. Then let's assume high school, 8. So there'll be 2 brackets, and each bracket will have 2 pools.
Okay.
Right. That makes sense?
And how many fields?
3.
3 fields. All right. So what I'm seeing here is at minimum 15 referees. Does that sound
And I
right to
had- Maybe I underestimated slightly. It's good when we do this math.
you?
Because yeah, it's gonna be on the high school side, the 2 larger brackets, there's gonna be more games there. Okay,
So again, a lot of us, when we're used to sort of the old method of take the total number of games and just divide that up by 3 or 4. Again, we can still probably get to close to the right number, especially if we're thinking that 4-game sweet spot. But when we're thinking about building in redundancy, just in case somebody that gets hurt or somebody shows up late because of traffic, those sorts of things, we want to err on the side of caution.
Mhm.
We also want to have opportunities for everybody to learn and grow. We want everybody to be fresh
get
at the end of the day. So we're thinking about probably maybe adding a little bit more to what we would normally think of for our simply take total number of matches and delete.
No. yeah, appreciate it. And it's the same conversation you went through, right? The club's looking at it and, I was probably on the higher end of the club. Right. And I'm sitting there going, look, I can do a maximum of 4 matches. Like in my head, I done sevens tournaments where I've done 5 matches? Absolutely. But I know what I was like, but match 5, right? Yeah, because I saw that too. Yeah, like we've all done it. And we also know the referee who did match 1 and the referee who did match 5. Right. And it's this factor, like the middle school. I'm like, yeah, you can probably, that's less taxing. Right. But when you get to the high school, particularly the boys, those matches can move.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And, again, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everybody's having a good experience and the teams are included.
and I want to highlight something you said because I think it was a really good call out too. Like when you have to change levels in the same day, that can be really tough. Yeah, if you're like dealing varsity JV, same gender, maybe it's less of an issue. But I've had days where it's like it hurts your brain. So
Yep.
thank you.
Go ahead, Buzz.
So if you're the head ref for a big tournament like this, you got 15 referees for 8 hours and you're doing your own games. It is a real luxury to have a guy like Mark Koiwai in the tent making the scheduling because you're going to lose track. You cannot keep it accurate. You can't keep things on the schedule. Somebody's got to be in there where people are reporting to him and saying, I don't think I do the next game. I could do the one after that. And then he can bump somebody. He can redo the grid that you so carefully took a week to develop and print it out and highlighted everybody's colors and everything on field 3 and field 1. And it's all going to fall apart like dominoes. But you got to have a guy like Mark Koiwai who comes out to coach, who's in the tent, who also can say, all right, we're going to move this and this and this and this and this. Because when you come off the field and you're all sweaty and coaches are still yelling at you because of whatever happened, you're not going to have your head on straight and get it right. So
I think that's a great point.
So
I think
build
maybe-
in a scheduler if you can.
I think that's a great point that we should make a point of assigning referee coaches / administrators to a tournament. I think that's a great idea. So bring that up. Find a board member. Oh wait, I'll bring it up. Okay. But yes, Ryan, we will make a note of that and bring that up.
Yeah, so Buzz mentioned something in passing that's really important, which is for larger tournaments, or I'd say pretty much any multi-field tournament, printing out that schedule and living with the teacher. It's highly recommend putting that in a transparent plastic, whatever you call those things, sheet protector, so that you can mark it up, bring your grease pencil to write it on, whatever. whatever works for you, but print that out and bring it so that everyone can see it, because everyone is going to, no one remembers more than what their next match is.
Absolutely. Any more questions on the subject matter? Otherwise, yeah, Liam, go ahead.
You mentioned something about how the old formula failed to account for the difficulty of the matches. I'm curious, I'm not sure I understood how the new formula does account for it. And B, I'm not sure I understand what is being quantified as the difficulty of a match.
Sure, great question. So basically what my formula is rule of three, right? And we sort of start with 3 referees. We add 3 referees for every field. We add 3 referees for every division. It is going to give us sort of, it's a model for achieving sort of the ideal number of referees that are going to have that redundancy. Rather than the previous formula, sort of, it gives you the bare minimum. And what we're trying to do is get the number with cushion. Does that make sense? So the old
Yes.
way, if we're thinking that 4 matches are all the same, and so we're going to assign, enough referees that they're all going to have 4 matches each. Even in the best case scenario where nobody gets hurt, we may still end up in a situation where Matt Lake's 4th game is just like the 3rd men's or 4th men's elite match that he's had that day. And he's doing everything he can, but he's shattered. And that's just not fair to the referee. So what we're trying to do again is build in that cushion and build in that redundancy. Does
So
that
is
answer your
there-
question? Oh, go ahead.
I feel like I'm just missing a metric maybe that other people who have been refereeing for longer have. What is I suppose the judgment by which certain matches are seen as more difficult to officiate than other matches?
Sure. And so
Is it
it
just
might be,
faster kids need a faster ref, or?
well, so there's two big factors, and one is sort of twofold. So there's a presentation from back in January that is posted that you might find really, really helpful. And it kind of talks about how assignments are made and how referees are trained and referees grow. So the way that we think about assignments, we think about it sort of on, here's our chart. One of our influencing factors is pace, quite literally the speed of the match. And then we're also thinking about speed of decision making and sort of our management category, which is speed of decision making and thinking about like the idea of, are you going to have to make a decision really, really fast? Or are you going to have a ton of decisions to make? And then your management quotient of how responsive are the teams going to be? How much work do you have to do? So we can organize it again, like here's your speed factors and here's your management factor. And the games are going to be somewhere in the middle. So you're thinking about speed and management are going to be at the lowest ebb because we're doing sort of like touch 10s. And they're going to be at the highest, sort of at this end of the chart, if you're doing like, the World Rugby Sevens. So most of us are kind of going to be in the middle somewhere, but that's how assignments are made, is we're thinking about speed and we're thinking about management. So at the end of the day, what we're seeing is like a men's elite final. That's going to be kind of at the higher end in that sort of chart that we're looking at. Whereas like a social anybody final is going to be probably still down here somewhere. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool.
And sorry, just I suppose one more follow-up. Where can I find that presentation from January?
I will scare up a link because I posted it. I believe it was on our Facebook page, but I will
Yes.
confirm.
Yep.
Oh, I'm seeing folks nod. So yes, that's where it is.
I definitely know. I saw last month's there. Not that I've had a chance to catch up.
Okay. If it's not posted, I will make sure it is posted.
Is it accessible from people who are not on Facebook?
Oh, okay. Shoot me an email and I will send it to you in a drive folder or some other accessible way.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Great. Since there's some newer refs on the call, it might be good to even go over nutrition on the day?
Yeah, you want to lead that discussion? Go right ahead.
Oh, crying out loud.
You volunteer.
You're the higher level ref. Come on. All right. So what I do, and don't take this by gospel, is on a sevens day, I'll usually eat a little more of a carby breakfast, not as much high in the protein. And I bring with me a lot of fruit, blueberries, bananas, and anytime I walk off the pitch, some of that goes into me. And when I get my bigger break, and hopefully, like as Grace got laid out, you get one during the course of the day. Like I usually have like a turkey sandwich on grain bread with, some vegetables in there. And this is pouring in fluids all day long, water, Gatorade, whatever it is. Even on Sunday, I did 2 middle school sevens match, a high school tens match, and I went through probably half a gallon of water. And it wasn't that bad, but I know if you're thirsty, it's too late. So I started even hydrating the day before. So like when I was younger, I could get away with it, but like a lot of tournaments, like the teams will give you a ticket, like here, have a free hamburger. That hamburger is delightful until the second you get back on a pitch. So that's the way I kind of manage it. I have to hyper manage it myself because I'm just, my body doesn't bounce back the way it used to. I don't know if there's anything anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, similar. You mentioned hydrating, and we also mentioned Gray having a second set of eyes on pretty much every game. That second set of eyes should probably be holding the center referee's water bottle, so that they can meet the referee wherever they are for that 1 minute halftime. It's unbelievably helpful when that happens, and it's hard as a 7 center ref to get over and get it yourself with only the 1 minute, because really refs only have 45 seconds because you have to be there before the teams come back, right? So that's also for new referees. I think that's also a great thing to do, because that'll also force you, if you volunteer to hold someone's water bottle, that'll force you to watch all the games, and then have probably like that'll lead into conversations about the game after the game, not during, after. So yes, someone should meet people with water bottles, always and forever.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, some people really like their salty snacks, some people like their sweet snacks. Just try to avoid what we call calorie deficit, right? By the time you notice that you're hungry, as Stephen said, and as Kristen said, if the time you notice you're hungry, the time you notice you're thirsty, it's probably too late, especially if you need to have those reserves. Because the reserves is you kind of notice that you're hungry, but you can probably get away with it. But if you're going right into a match, or if you wait until you're really hungry, then you will not have any reserves. So you might be able to squeak it out, but again, we're always talking about redundancy. So make sure that you're on a schedule. Some folks like to set a schedule. Emily Shea likes to set alarms that she would know, like, hey, I need to eat now. So it's just really sort of make sure that you're doing what you need to do so that you never notice that you're hungry or thirsty. So keeping up those electrolytes. Mike O'Brien, basically started dating me because I brought him a Pop-Tart at the tournament once. So. Oh yeah, good point, Buzz. Head refs, tend to cater snacks. So that's something, if you as a head referee, it's sometimes really helpful for you to help organize those snacks. Do a quick poll, be like, hey, anybody food allergies, anything you need to worry about? That has happened. A referee did need to have a shot after he interacted with some peanut butter at a tournament once. But anyway, so just making sure that you're bringing snacks, or at least coordinating with the host team, or just let everybody at Friday night Costco run, or just let people know that they're going to be OYO for snacks. Sometimes there are food trucks. That's really nice too. So yeah. Does somebody else have a hand up that I missed?
Ryan had his hand up.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I pretty much just put it in the chat, which is, yeah, if you're the head ref, don't go overboard, but also don't feel like you have to skimp on snacks. Potomac will cover that cost. And then, figure out from the tournament organizer, if you can, what they have available, what they're providing. Almost all tournaments now, I would say, provide a pallet of water. Now, if you have 15 referees, a pallet of water isn't going to go very far. But there are other tournaments like Navy and Mount St. Mary, some of the colleges come to mind where they really take care of the referees, and you'll have most everything that you need already there. So it just depends tournament by tournament. Get as much information as you can, but then yeah, make sure you take care of your people and think about bringing beers for afterwards. But not everyone will stick around for it, and obviously not required. Does make people like you better, which may mean that you're head ref again in the future, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just posted in the chat, that's the list of tournaments that, as far as we know, that's the master list. I've already emailed them about a couple of corrections though, so don't take it as gospel. But if you're traveling around this summer, one of the ways that, you can always just sort of email somebody and say, hey, I'd like to come and have fun. But there's always an opportunity, especially for newer referees, to talk to your development officer. Send Izzy an email. If you don't have Izzy's email, let me know. Send Izzy an email, be like, hey, I'm going up to Saranac. And he'll say, hey, I know people there. I'll email the tournament organizer. I'll give them a brief rundown of your background so they can make sure to assign you to the appropriate matches. Sometimes it's really, really helpful because if they don't know you from Bob, they'll do the best they can. But sometimes, again, if we're really thinking about, are you going to grow at that tournament? Are you going to learn something? Are you going to have a good time? Go ahead and give them that information so they know who they're working with. So just send your development officer an email. Let them know that you want to go out of your region, out of your area, and they'll hook you up. So, any other questions?
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, yeah, on that note, I am a believer that ARing is the best way to learn as a new referee, but a close second is tournaments, because someone will have eyes on, if you're a new referee, someone will have eyes on your match unless something's gone wrong and we're just out of referees. And anything, you come back from the match and say, I really didn't know what to do in this situation. You're in the tent with 3 or 4 other referees who can answer your question and say, yeah, well, yeah, you got it wrong. Don't worry about it. Go out and do it better the next match if that is what happens. So strongly encourage picking up tournament assignments.
Absolutely. All right. Any other final questions about the subject matter before I turn off the recording? All right.